Friends, this intriguing story revolves around two men who were frozen long ago. However, when they were eventually thawed out, they discovered an astonishing truth. All men had vanished from the world. Only women remained, and these two men found themselves as the sole males among them. The tale unfolds in the year 1991. At this point, we witness a press conference discussing the first human hibernation of the century. Among the volunteers were two men, Max and Albert. Additionally, a professor, who was the mastermind behind the development of this remarkable machine, was present. Then the professor announces to everyone that our experiment has been a great success. We have kept this chimpanzee in that chamber for a total of 6 months. And remarkably, the age of this chimpanzee has not increased even a little bit. Furthermore, it is in perfect health, so now the professor desires to use humans for his next experiment. Max and Alberto were eager to be the ones to go inside that machine. The professor mentions that at this moment, he wishes to place these 3 individuals into the machine for a duration of 3 years. However, it is extremely risky due to the fact that the human body is significantly different from that of a chimpanzee, which could result in complications during this process. Despite these concerns, Max and Albert were still willing to enter the machine. Subsequently, the machine is activated, and Max and Albert are placed inside. As time gradually moves forward, 50 years eventually elapse. Later, the machine is opened, and Max and Albert are found inside the machine. They are removed, and immediately upon their exit, it is evident that neither of them has aged at all. They remain the same age as when they entered the machine. Now feeling hungry, 3 girls bring them food. Having not eaten for such a long time, both had forgotten what food tasted like. Later, Max mentions that he had stashed a bottle of liquor and some cigarettes inside the machine, and now is the time to retrieve them. He then proceeds to take out all the items, and both of them, they light up a cigarette and begin to smoke it right there. But as soon as the smoke starts to spread around, alarms begin ringing loudly everywhere. Everyone starts to feel that something unusual is happening there. Then, 2 women arrive at the scene and begin to extinguish the fire. After a little while, a woman named Dr. Blong arrives and informs them that the professor has passed away. Both women are shocked to hear this news. Dr. Blong then explains that a great war had occurred here, and during that war, something transpired which resulted in the death of all the men on Earth. Now, only women are left on Earth, and you all survived because you were inside this machine. Upon hearing this, both of them become frightened and begin to run away from here. But as soon as they touch the outside door, they receive a strong electric shock and fall down. Albert begins to think more about this and tells Max, "Brother, everything is fine. We were inside the machine for 50 hours, and that is why we are feeling this way." Max says, "Brother, you are absolutely right. If there are no men on this earth, then how is our generation progressing?" Meanwhile, Dr. Bourne's son was listening to their conversation. She then responds, "Here, babies are created by machines." Upon hearing this news, both individuals become even more shocked and surprised. Meanwhile, another doctor named Mary approaches Dr. Blonde and advises her that she should discuss her research with other colleagues and doctors. She emphasizes that conducting research on these 2 individuals secretly is not appropriate. Meanwhile, we observe Max and Albert in their room, where suddenly a television turns on unexpectedly and a girl begins speaking on it. Witnessing this, Max comes to the realization that the children being born are actually being conceived with the assistance of test tubes. Upon hearing this, Max becomes sad and questions how people can treat children this way. Albert explains that much has changed over the past 50 years. He mentions that nowadays, women don't even need to be intimate to become pregnant. After this conversation, they both start drinking alcohol and become emotional. The next morning, when they open their eyes, they find Dr. Blonde standing in front of them. She inquires about how they are both feeling. Max responds by saying that everything feels fine at the moment. "But if you get intimate with me." Upon hearing this, Dr. Blonde becomes furious, picks him up, and then throws him down. Upon witnessing everything, Albert advises Mech by saying, "Brother, these North Indians are completely unaware of how to be intimate, so it's best not to engage in any conversation with them." After a while, Dr. Blott arrives with several guards and begins explaining to both of them that radiation has now spread across the entire world. She warns that if anyone ventures outside, they will die due to the radiation exposure. She further mentions that they had an animal that unfortunately succumbed to the radiation. Next, both of them proceed to check all the animals, and then their leader arrives. Max is surprised to see the leader and begins a conversation with her. He asks her about her age, but a woman nearby interrupts, saying, "Do you know your age? You both are actually 86 years old." However, Max isn't bothered by this revelation and approaches the leader. Suddenly, all the guards seize Max and begin to beat him, but then the leader intervenes, telling them to release him. Max then tells them that why are people deceiving us? What exactly transpired here? And where did all the men disappear to? Then, the leader explains that the professor is to blame. He invented a machine that was supposed to halt the aging process in men, but eventually, this very machine ended up claiming the lives of all those men. Upon hearing this, Albert questions, "How could such a thing possibly happen? We are still alive, and if you wish, we can both assist you. You could become close to us and have a child." But the leader becomes upset upon hearing this. Meanwhile, she notices an apple tree where 2 apples were hanging earlier, but 2 donkeys have plucked and eaten them. Seeing this, the leader remarks that you know what happened in the Bible. All the chaos began because of these apples, and you want to start this chaos again. Following that, the leader severely beats both of them, treating them like dogs, and then locks them back in the room. Now Max starts crying because he got beaten up by a woman for the first time. But Albert consoles him, saying that, "Brother, don't worry, we will soon get out of here, and I am sure that there is a world outside this place as well." On the other side, we see Dr. Blonde, who is thinking what it is like to be intimate. Now to find out this, she goes to the oldest woman and asks her what it is like to be intimate. The woman explains that when 2 people are in love, they become part of each other, which is known as being intimate, and through this, they can have a child. She then asks what they plan to do with both of them, to which it's said that they will also make them women. The old woman comments that this will be a punishment worse than death. Later, both men are captured and taken to the lab, where they observe women being brainwashed and taught everything about men. Wrong things are told about how men used to torture women in the past. Once more, both individuals are presented with a form to sign. This form states that experiments will be conducted on their bodies, yet both of them decline to sign it. After a while, the enclosure they are in opens, revealing a room filled with many women seated there. These women had actually gathered to determine what actions should be taken regarding these men. Upon hearing this, both men quickly flee from the scene. As they make their escape, they encounter women along the way. Seeing these women, they impulsively pounce on them and begin kissing them. In that place, all the women make a unanimous decision that they will now conduct experiments on these 2 men. Meanwhile, both men manage to escape and hurry downwards until they discover an underground passage. Using this passage, they venture further down. Upon emerging, they stumble upon a liquor bottle lying on the ground and a newspaper alongside it. The newspaper contains an article stating that in 1993, a tragic accident occurred in which all the men were killed. However, just as they are digesting this information, some guards arrive to apprehend them. Upon spotting the guards, they quickly flee from the scene and make their way to a nearby cave. They emerge with the tunnel's assistance, and right when they step out, they notice numerous women present who appeared to be celebrating. In reality, these women were rebels, and they deliberately chose not to adhere to the rules of litter. Now, both of them were observing everything when, all of a sudden, the guards appeared and captured them. Meanwhile, the women below also got frightened upon seeing the guards and began to flee from there. In this chaotic situation, Max and Albert managed to evade the guards and escape. However, as they were running, they ended up at an elevator where they encountered Dr. Bound. Seeing him, both of them became fearful, but then the doctor explained that if they went outside, they wouldn't survive. Despite this warning, they insisted, saying that they were indeed crazy. Don't make it. Then Dr. Blanon brings both of them to a machine and asks them to take a look outside. After peering through that machine, they realize that there is devastation everywhere outside, and no human being can survive in such conditions. Along with this, the doctor also shows them the radiation levels outside, demonstrating how extremely high the radiation is. Due to this radiation, all the people had perished. However, both of them refuse to believe her words and insist that they would rather go outside and face death. Saying this, they decide to leave from there, Dr. Blown. She says, "I cannot bear to watch you die like this." After saying this, she calls the guards over. Then the guards arrive and begin to escort them away. Both of them start to insult Dr. Blonde, saying that she is incredibly selfish. Then, two guards approach Dr. Blonde and inform her that she has been promoted. She also informs him that both of these men have been declared one-edged, and very soon they will undergo an operation to be transformed into girls. However, before this happens, the doctor requires your research, as you have spent the most time with both of them. Based on your research, they will be converted into women. But then, we observe that Dr. Blonde was not in favor of this development, as she did not want both of them to be turned into women. Meanwhile, we also witness Match and Albert being taken to the lab. He leaves, but then they both start shouting that they'd rather die than become a woman. Yet the woman ignores them and begins taking Max inside. Meanwhile, Max sees his wife, who tells him that when he went into hibernation, she was pregnant, but he cared for neither her nor their child. Just as she was about to operate on him, Dr. Blonde arrives, rescues them both, and they start to escape. However, Albert had been given an anesthesia injection, due to which he starts having nightmares and his condition worsens. Then, when he goes upstairs, he sees two guards there, and Dr. Blonde tells him to take off his clothes and give them to these two men. Furthermore, both of them put on those special clothes, which were actually radiation protection suits. After this, she tries to get them out, but the main gate doesn't open. The doctor inquires Blongard about why it isn't opening, to which they both reveal that it requires a password only known by their leader. Witnessing this, Max becomes furious and starts shouting at them. But then, all of a sudden, she notices the door has opened, indicating that the password was actually an insult. Now, the doctor is reluctant to send both of them out on their own. She really wanted to visit that place, so she makes the decision to join them on their journey. After deciding, she puts on a special protective suit designed to shield her from radiation. Once she's ready, the three of them ascend together. Upon reaching the top, they are met with a scene of complete devastation. Everything appears to be in ruins. However, as Max steps forward, he unexpectedly bumps into a curtain. In response, he pulls out a knife and carefully cuts through the curtain. Once they emerge from behind it, they are surprised to find that everything outside is perfectly normal. It turns out that what they had been witnessing was merely an elaborate setup. Realizing this, they begin to explore the area, taking in the sights around them. They see a beach and feel happy, but soon their oxygen decreases. Max removes his suit and finds no radiation. In reality, that leader was deceiving them, and as a result, the other women were also swayed by her words. After advancing a bit further, they notice a large house and decide to enter it. Inside, they find an abundance of food. After some time, Ahmed arrives and informs them that they are under arrest. However, during this period, the oxygen in her suit begins to deplete, causing her to pass out right there. Albert then picks her up, carries her inside the house, and starts to remove her suit. But just as Amma slowly opens her eyes and begins to shout at Albert, in the midst of this commotion, she unintentionally presses the remote control. This action reveals that the leader has circulated a rumor about Dr. Bound's death. Following this revelation, the scene shifts to two women, and it is revealed that these women are actually Max and Albert, who have been transformed into women through a surgical operation. While they are processing all of this information, they suddenly become aware that someone is approaching from outside. Realizing the urgency of the situation, they quickly find a place to hide. Meanwhile, the leader arrives there, and then they discover that this house belongs to their leader. However, the leader realizes, upon seeing the state of her house, that someone else is present there too. As soon as she opens the cupboard, Max and Albert grab her, and they find out that their leader is not a woman, but actually a man. Witnessing this, both of them are shocked and question him about his intentions and reasons for doing all this. Then, the man reveals his entire truth, explaining that 20 years ago, he was the only man left on this earth. But they were pressuring me to transform into a girl, so I decided to apply makeup myself, became a girl, and started living with them. After a while, I was appointed as the leader of this place. Then, Max and Albert ask him if he informed those women that there is actually no radiation outside. To this, the leader responds that initially, there was indeed a lot of radiation here, but gradually it began to decrease. However, I lacked the courage to tell them the truth, because all those women are quite crazy. After this, Max and Dr. Blonde become intimate, and Alberto Emmy sees them. The next day, they go to the lab where babies are made and leave a sign of their love in the formula, ensuring all males are born. They get angry when a male is born. Meanwhile, a nurse sees the boy and screams loudly. And friends, this story ends here.